Oh, go
Why
ahead.
does learning air quotes kanji not matter?
Okay, yeah. So the main reason to learn kanji in isolation, like we have mnemonics and this kanji means this thing. The main reason to do that is to stop worrying whether or not you know the kanji. Yes, it is helpful to know kanji so that you can understand words that contain them, but you could skip learning kanji completely and probably be fine. So we're presented with this interesting problem where pretty much every student who studies Japanese is very, 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 very concerned about how am I going to learn kanji. And so, say they are studying with NativShark, and yeah, we teach kanji. We do have mnemonics for them because it's comforting to know, like, I know that kanji. I know that what it means, so I can understand this word that it appears in. You have a student who's studying with NativShark, which does teach kanji, and then they finish their studies for the day, and they have extra time, and they want to study more, and then they go to study more kanji, whether it be in a different resource or with a book or with an app or whatever. And I do not think it's a useful usage of your time as a student to go do
Right.
that because I'm the greatest example of this because I was obsessed with kanji as a
Okay.
student.
Side note:
And
you did write the HJS, which was kind of almost entire. You wrote that like one of the most read articles on the internet about learning kanji for like 8 years
but
straight. So that is who you're coming
yeah,
from.
but there's this difference between what was written there and what people read it as. So if you read the whole article or the whole lesson on how to learn kanji on HJS or in HJS on Nihongo Shark, I do say the main reason to learn kanji like this is so that you stop worrying about them
Yeah.
because it doesn't really matter. And
I feel.
I am the great example of this because I did do kanji by mnemonics and I learned them in isolation. And then I also learned them with example words for each onyomi kunyomi, for each kanji. And then I learned Japanese and I forgot the meanings of all the kanji mostly in isolation. And this really interesting thing happened when we're doing phase one content. So we decided we want to make it accessible for a student to see the onyomi kunyomi examples for kanji if they want to. So before it was the show more, show less in your flashcards. Now there's a little eye you can click to see an example sentence with a word that contains that kanji for onyomi kunyomi. Creating those lists so that students can see them, I saw all these words that I learned like 5, 6 years prior because I was studying kanji and I was so worried that I didn't know onyomi kunyomi for both of them.
Right.
So I actually learned a word for each one. And then a lot of those words I never encountered ever again until we made the list to have them in the database of NativShark.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I remember that word. It was in my flashcards years ago. So why is a student who is phase one level, why are they worrying about, this is a word with onyomi of this kanji. Now that I know that, like, I'm going to know this kanji better. Well, if that word is useful, you're going to learn it soon anyway. If it's not useful, you're going to learn it eventually.
Right.
If it's not useful at all, maybe you'll never learn it unless you have a very specific reason to learn it. And I was going through a kanji app just this morning, just because I'm always checking out how other people are teaching things, and it had like a little level check thing at the beginning, and to check if you're advanced, it was, do you know the difference between these three kanji? And I didn't know the difference between them because they're not in words. If you gave me the words that they appear in, I'm sure I could read them because I can read books in Japanese.
Right.
So we are presented with this problem where we don't want to waste a student's time, but they think that we're not teaching them if we don't push them toward a certain path that they think is a productive use of their time.
Right.
And this is happening now with kanji is a great example, but it's going to happen with anything we teach, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an interesting problem to try to solve because on the one hand, you don't want to ignore what a student
Of
thinks is
course.
important because many times they will be right, at least partially right or fully right.
Yep.
And many times there's no such thing as right or wrong, it just depends. I don't think it's a waste of time to learn kanji. I think it's helpful because it gives you peace of mind, and because sometimes it's really cool to learn a word that contains two kanji that you already know and be like, oh, that kanji plus this kanji means that word. That's
Right.
exciting. That's really exciting for me as a student to learn. So I think it's useful. I think if you're worried about it, that is not useful.
Definitely, there's this balance between what people are worried about. Understandably, we were there too. We were worried about it. But now on this side of things, it's almost like we want to talk to our past selves and be like, hey, you didn't actually need to waste all this time. And especially because, or by waste all this time, I mean like spend this time worrying or being concerned about, if it was going to work or whatnot. Um, and so we see that, and we're caught in this space where we have we're teaching new students and we want to help them avoid the mistakes that we made, but there's so much noise out there on the internet. It's hard to know and to feel like, am I doing what I am doing going to work? So then we have to build the platform to account for that. And I think in the case of kanji, it doesn't do that right now. It currently does not account for right now it works to teach you the content and to actually teach you the kanji, but it doesn't account for the students feeling of that they're not going to learn them well enough. That's what it doesn't do right now. So
Yeah, I think
because
so.
the honestly the answer to how do you learn to read Japanese, right? That's what kanji is. How do you do it? It's don't worry about it, right? Like I'm the biggest example of that approach because I quit RTK after like 1500 completely, and then I just stopped any sort of kanji learning method entirely. 100% done. I just was like, I don't not interested. I can't do it. Well, no, I can't do it isn't the good word. I just didn't like doing it. It didn't feel useful, and it was not motivating for me to learn kanji in that method or any. I didn't use any app. I did nothing. I just did my other studies for Japanese while we were building, NativShark and the NativShark, and that was just reading lessons and uh, learning sentences, immersion, this kind of thing. I did no specific kanji thing, but now I get emails from the bank and I can read the entire email, and I'm like, how did that happen? At what point did I become able to read a letter from the bank, or I can read the newspaper now too, for like 85%. Some, obviously there's some words that I look up or just skip over, whatever. But like I can read these things, and how did that happen? I don't really know, other than I didn't worry about it. At a certain point, I just stopped worrying about it, and I just, I used to be ridiculous with my flashcards. I used to hit hard or forgot on everything, and I would end up with like 1,500 reviews, and then I would quit for like months at a time because I didn't want to deal with that. So then I'd reset the deck, and I'd be like, well, I reset the deck, so I have to start over. So I would start over from the beginning, and I would go through it again, and then the same thing would happen. So at a certain point, I just realized this is madness, and I stopped. I stopped using flashcards entirely for a really long time until I was finally able to build a system, which is the one that became what NativShark is now, where it's don't worry about it and respond based off of how you feel about it. And honestly, clicking like the meh face or the smile face just over time is actually better than clicking forgot all the time, because when you click forgot all the time, it's because you're worried that you're not going to remember it. But the point of when SRS works is that it resurfaces it again in the future. So if you're constantly clicking forgot, which is what I used to do, it basically ruins it. It breaks your progress. Thinking it's always pass fail just breaks the progress. It's not. I mean, that's a really strong statement, but I feel pretty confident to make that it is not that. The brains don't work that way, right? So if you just kind of don't worry so much, and the thing is, over my story that I just talked about of like failing and things, I never stopped. That was the thing. I never actually quit. I always continued. I always came back, and I always kept going in a direction. The direction looked like this sometimes, but it was a direction, and that's the biggest thing, right? It's like, so if you're clicking, the meh face or the smile face, as long as you keep showing up. Now, if you stop showing up, now it's gonna matter, and you're probably gonna forget. It's not immediate results. It's like this is the results that will take place over months at a time, sometimes years. That's where you'll see these things add up. Like through my Japanese learning journey, there were many times where I felt like, even today, I often feel like I'm complete trash, which is kind of true, depending on the context. But I'm way better now than I was a couple years ago, and somehow I arrived here.
And I know we were going to save comments for later, but I just wanted to point out the one from Amnistar where he says that I know that I've understood a sentence without knowing how to pronounce things because I recognize the kanji meanings and can translate it ish. So I definitely struggle with the idea that learning kanji meanings isn't helpful. And I think that is correct and valid. But that doesn't mean you need to know an English word that represents the meaning of that kanji.
Yeah, I want to say
I
too,
do the same
it's not.
thing. I often see things I wouldn't have been able to read, but I can decipher it because I know the kanji, and in 99.99% of cases, I know the kanji because I know words that contain those kanji. I don't remember. I can read everything on this milk tea bottle, and I can read this word that's bito, which means like light sugar, not very sweet. And you ask me what does like B mean in bito? I think it's the B in bimyo. So it's like not very much or something
I
like
think
that.
so.
Not very much sugar, right?
Right.
Bimyo. Um, I can't write it from memory. If it was in a flashcard, I probably wouldn't know what to say. Is the English meaning? But I know the words that it's used in. And so if I see a different word with that has this kanji in it, I can think, oh, that's the B in bito. It's the B in bimyo. It's the and
Which
so on.
side note, this is
Um,
how like Japanese or native speakers refer to kanji themselves. It's like bimyo no bi, you know,
yeah, they do that. Yeah.
um, soldan no dan.
Sometimes they do it other ways,
Yeah,
but it's very common to
but
do it the way you're
referring to
describing. Yeah.
them within the context of words is the way that native speakers refer to them typically. There's other ways, but you
Yeah. Well, it's easier to refer to them that way.
right. So yeah, another point on what you were saying with like what Amistar said is it's not that that isn't like that it doesn't work to learn kanji through English meetings like strictly like that. Which like that is how we are teaching our kanji right now. Just as an aside, that is how it's being done. But what we're saying is like you don't need to like spend all this time on it. That's what we're talking about right now. Um, but it's not that it doesn't work. It's just that you don't have to do it, and it takes a lot of effort to do it that way. To worry about it, to spend so much time
Yeah.
failing yourself on kanji when you don't have to. That's what we're getting at here. Is like you can do that. We've done it, but you don't need to do it. So if you don't need to do it, and if that's causing you to slow up in your studies, then just don't do it, and you'll still be fine.
Yeah. This also goes back to the issue of the platform as we want it to be and what it is right now.
Yeah.
Like the platform should work so that you could hover over any kanji in any context on it and see what that kanji means, like what its
Oh, of
relative
course.
English representations
Yeah.
probably are. So you should be able to do what Amistar is describing here, where you see a word that you're not familiar with, and you should be able to hover over each kanji in it and be like, oh yeah, it means that. I almost forgot, but yeah, this kanji means that. This one means that. So it totally makes sense. This word means that. Sometimes it doesn't make sense, but that's fine.
Right.
Um, I think that's really useful, and it's really helpful
Yeah.
for
I
learning the
think so
word that
too.
way. But it doesn't mean that you need to be able to produce that English word for that
Right.
kanji
On
by
on your
memory.
own.